Welcome to Third Thursday. I'm Donna Owens, Program Director of the OCALI Family Center. On the third Thursday of each month, the OCALI Family Center presents a live web stream broadcast from the Family Center webpage. These broadcasts focus on a topic of interest to parents of children and adults with autism spectrum disorder and other developmental disabilities. Each of these broadcasts are recorded and archived on the Family Center webpage, so they can be viewed at any time. If you see anything of interest here that you think would be of interest to another parent that you know, please let them know so they can check out the Third Thursday icon on the Family Center webpage. We have covered topics on puberty and sexuality, effective transition planning, from standards-based education and alternate assessment to an overview of assistive technology. There are a wide range of topics if you can check our website on the Third Thursday icon. Today, we're going to be focusing on the summer break, that 2.5 months of unstructured time that parents have to plan for their child with a developmental disability or with autism spectrum disorders. What we want to promote today is to encourage you to choose activities for your child that will promote their learning basic life skills and promote their learning about their community so they can eventually join their community with their peers. I'm going to be interviewing today 3 people that I work with, and I will start with Jill Hudson. You're in charge of national, state, and community partnerships. And Jill is an experienced trainer, has been a camp director, and has written several books about camp and other activities for children with disabilities and autism spectrum disorders. I'm also going to be talking to Amy Bixler-Coffin. She's a program director of the OCALI Autism Center. And she's an experienced trainer, and she and Jill have worked together on a couple of books, one of them being titled Out and About in the Community, right? And so we'll be talking about that some today. I'll also be interviewing Jen Bavery. And Jen is a program assistant for the Autism Certification Center and the parent of 16-year-old Josh, a young man with a developmental disability and with autism spectrum disorder. Right, Jen? Mm-hmm. Thank you all for choosing to talk to me today. I really do appreciate it. So first of all, Jill and Amy, what brought you to focus on this topic of encouraging families to get their children engaged in community activities? And Jill, I'll start with you first.
Well, we had heard from a variety of families, a series of parents saying that they never were able to go out to dinner together as a family, or that they weren't sure their child would do well on a team, or even though they might have a special interest, they were nervous about sending a child to camp or to a special activity. And so Amy and I were talking about this, and we really believe that with the right supports in place, kids can be successful in the community. They're an important part of the community. Families ought to be able to go and have dinner together at a restaurant and do activities that they would like to do as a family. And so we started really focusing on how can we put some supports in place and talk with parents about what they can do in advance to help their child be successful and to be engaged in activities that they'd like to be a part of.
Right. Now, Amy, and I know that you're a teacher and that you do a lot of training for teachers, but you're also committed to this topic as well.
Yes, in the past, prior to this position, I worked directly with teachers who supported students on the autism spectrum and had the opportunity of working on a daily basis with the families, and really had the opportunity to hear from them that, Dad goes with this child and I stay home with this child, or we really never do anything as a family because it's just a struggle to do that. And it was heartbreaking to me because every child should have the opportunity to be out in the community. Every child should be able to experience activities on a regular basis, like birthday parties or going to the grocery store. Well, it's not real exciting to go to the grocery store no matter what, but
for kids it is.
Exactly, for kids it is. But or to a restaurant or to, the park or wherever. And families were not participating in those activities because they didn't feel that they could
Right.
And so Jill and I really started talking about, yes, they can, and we need to get them the supports and the strategies and almost the process behind thinking, how can we do this and how can we support our child to be part of our family.
So they can have successful activities or successful experiences in the community. So parents were afraid that their children would misbehave or not be as controllable, or there would be an incident.
Or that it could be successful not only for the child, him or herself, but also for the family and for the siblings.
Right.
And so we really took that into consideration. We started talking about supports that the sibling could provide, or even supports for the siblings, in order to make it a very engaging and exciting activity when they're out in the community for all.
Right. So the book then focuses on the thinking process that parents can go through to figure out what are we going to need to make this successful outing for all of us. What can we think about and put in place beforehand. Now, I noticed that in the title of your book is Preparing Children with Autism Spectrum Disorders to Participate in Their Communities. Now, is this just for kids with autism spectrum disorders?
Well, obviously when we started writing it, it was geared in that direction. And so we just looked across and said, what are some common needs or some common areas where we can put some supports in place based on the characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. But it really is, so for example, communication support, or maybe a visual strategy, or some type of support for a sensory need. And so these are also characteristics or strategies that can go across to a variety of other types of disabilities, or like Amy said, the siblings, even children that don't necessarily have a disability but might need a strategy in place. It's a great tool for that as well.
Right, yeah, so it's not specific to
not just
this
for autism,
right,
no.
Right, yeah.
But very necessary and helpful for children with autism.
Right, for a kid that would need this kind of support that you can think about. I mean, you're going to a place like the zoo or whatever, where there are lots of activities and it can be very confusing, but it's a way to make it manageable.
Yes, for any, I have a soon-to-be 5-year-old at home, and I use these strategies on a regular basis to prepare him for something new, or for the possibility that this could happen, and how can we respond. So little guys can really benefit from this as well.
Right, right. Well, very good. Could you give me an example of how parents could use this information? And I know that you have something in your book that's called the blueprint, right? And so could you kind of explain the blueprint, Amy?
Sure.
How it's set up and how parents might use it?
Sure, I'd be glad to talk about the blueprint. The blueprint is sort of like a template or a way of thinking when you're preparing to go out into the community. So when we think about preparing a child for, say, example, going out to eat with a family. And I worked with a family when I lived up north, and they rarely went out to dinner. And the parents really wanted to go out as a family, but it was just a challenge for this little guy to go out to eat. So we talked about, well, what does he like to eat? And so we thought about some motivation behind this, and that's one of the supports on the blueprint is motivation. And he loved a specific type of pizza. And so we said, okay, he loves Angie's Pizza, so we're going to pick Angie's Pizza Parlor to go to. We're not going to pick a different restaurant, but we're going to start off with Angie's Pizza Parlor because it's motivating. So we talked about, okay, when we get to the pizza parlor, what can we expect? Well, they're a little slow in service.
Right.
Okay, so he's going to need some support while he waits. So part of the blueprint, or part of the thinking behind supports, is a waiting plan. So we developed into the waiting plan possibilities of strategies, like he could have his little video game because he's, as a waiting support.
Right.
Or we could take a visual timer and kind of get an idea. Well, on an average, we kind of wait for 15 minutes or so we'll set the visual timer in that. So waiting support could help.
So before you even go, you're thinking about,
we're
going to have to wait. I know we're going to have to wait once we get there. So we're going to be prepared with something that we're going to do when we get there during this waiting period.
We also knew that they had said that the Angie's Pizza Parlor was a very popular restaurant. So it was probably going to be busy. So, and we knew that this little man had some sensory differences, and that he became anxious when it got loud in certain situations. So we knew that in the past at school he would use earbuds for assemblies or for days of the fire alarms or things like that.
Right.
So we thought, okay, we'll take the earbuds to the Angie's Pizza Parlor. So if there was a lot of people in there and they knew that they had a jukebox, and if the jukebox got too loud, he could have the sensory support of earbuds while he's waiting with his waiting support.
Right.
So then we talked about the fact that he has 2 siblings, and we wanted it to be an engaging time for everyone at the table. And so what could we do to encourage social interaction with him? So social is another area on the blueprint, and what strategies could we incorporate in to lend towards that area. And so we talked about how they like to play at home a certain table game that he participates in. So let's take the table game to the, but and families don't necessarily think about all of these things when they go out into the community, but they can, and they can take their little toolbox, if you will, of supports, and it can ultimately help everyone that's engaged in this family dinner to have a positive experience.
Right, right. And so your blueprint would list these things kind of as prompts. Is that right, Jill, that parents
Yes.
might use? Now, so you've got a waiting plan, you've got a social support. What other prompts are there on your blueprint to help parents think about, would I need this or not when we go out?
So communication strategies, visual supports, the hidden curriculum, which are things that we may intuitively pick up on, but a child with autism or a disability may not necessarily intuitively pick up on. Like Amy said, also, what is it? How can we incorporate the siblings or other classmates? Motivators,
Right.
transition. So if a child is moving from one activity to the next, how can you help with some of that transition? Behavior supports, social supports.
And it really does depend upon the activity that you're engaging in,
Right.
as well as the student and the combination thereof. And just knowing that the supports that you use at a restaurant, at Angie's Pizza Parlor, may not be the same supports, transition supports, motivation supports, hidden curriculum supports that you use at a zoo.
Right.
And so those are the things to keep in mind, that you kind of think about the supports and then what are the strategies that can lend to that particular community outing or activity.
And the other thing that's nice is, as you're calling them prompts, that as Amy's listing all of those off, it might seem overwhelming to a parent, but you could really try one or two. If that's his favorite pizza place, then go there first, because that's motivating, and maybe pick a time that it's going to be less crowded, or so just trying to think as a whole outing, as a whole activity, a whole environment. What are some things? But these prompts help you to think about a variety of different perspectives or aspects, and then maybe introducing one or two. Bringing a sensory support, bringing a waiting plan, and enjoying pizza. And then maybe the next time introducing the social game, because it also is a game that's familiar at home, the table game that they're playing. So you can layer those upon one another. And so really it's nice that you may use this actual template and write things down on occasion, that there's another spot in there, not just what is the strategy, but what is your desired outcome. So,
Yes.
what is it that you're really trying to accomplish as you're going? So maybe there's just one small goal, or this time it's just that he is sitting at the table with us, and it's okay if he's not engaging in conversation. So it's just, small steps one at a time, depending on, what your goal is as a family, and how often or how frequent you've gone somewhere, or what the environment is, what it calls for.
And it is very dependent on what the activity, like we have Franklin Park Conservatory here, and it has a butterfly exhibit sometimes, and that would be something that I think kids might be interested in going to, but you also want to make sure that you would want to make sure that your child will be prepared for an
Well,
activity
and that's
like
a
that.
good example, because what you then could do, what we talked about and also included, was that then you could talk to the school personnel and say, we're going to go in 2 weeks to the Franklin Conservatory, and there's a butterfly village there. And so, well, as the teacher, we can start talking about butterflies, and we can start talking about what you'll see, and maybe that they'll land on your shoulder, and what you can do, and things like that. So we really talked about how you can incorporate this to communicate back and forth between school personnel and family, to help this, to allow the school personnel to support the family in participating in the community.
Right.
And the same vice versa. If the child is going to go on a field trip with the school, then the family could know what they could be doing at home also to be preparing for an outing, starting to introduce the same terms, or to talk through what the routine might be, or if they need to take a break or if they need some help, just continue to talk about in advance what's going to happen during that day.
Yeah, because just living with you learn to you learn to anticipate what your child is going to need. And now, Jen, you may not have read this book, but being a parent of a 16-year-old, you've got 16 years of experience here in taking Josh in the community. And have you ever used any strategies? Have you gone through a thought process like this?
Very similar. We haven't actually used the template that they've developed, but something very close to it, where it's important for us to prepare Josh for anything that he's going to do, and it may be a couple weeks ahead of time or building up to it. It could be that day, but it's really, for us, we have found that works well for him. If he understands where we're going, what we're going to be doing, he has choices in what we're going to actually be seeing, or if we're going to a restaurant, having a choice in the restaurant, it kind of helps him enjoy the activity more. He also, sometimes it helps him to know there's an end to an activity. So we will put together visual schedules. I know Jill mentioned that, as well as social narratives talk about where we're going to go. When we get to the activity, we may have a little guide for him, like for example, when we go to the zoo, we may have pictures of different animals that are at the zoo, and as he goes through and sees them, he can check them off, so that again he knows that he's gone through and he's looked at everything, and that there's going to be an end to the outing soon. It just helps him enjoy it more. He's not as anxious about it. He's able to kind of, take in the whole entire environment without feeling like he has to rush through it or not knowing what's going to come next.
Right, and be overwhelmed by just all of the stimulation, and you'll pick out things that you know that you're going to focus on. We're going to go to the lion next, or I want to see the bear. He could make choices about this is where I want to go next, and so the child then becomes involved and engaged in this activity, and then. And I believe very strongly that that we're all a part of the community, but we need to know the community that we're a part of too, and we can't learn it unless we have the opportunity to become engaged, to take in some of those activities, to even know what the community has to offer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's important for us too, because we don't know what he likes until we actually take him out there into the community and find out. So there may be times where we take him on an activity, prepare as much as we can, and he does not want to be there. And so it just means he's not interested in that particular activity. And then it could go really well with something else. But we don't want to hesitate on taking him out and exposing him to different things that, because that way we find out what he wants to do and what he has an interest in. And then we can take those activities that we know he likes and expand on them, put the social piece in there, put the more waiting, kind of helping him understand, like going to a restaurant, all the steps involved with going to a restaurant. But we won't know that that's a good place to take him to try those things until we kind of test it out.
Right. Right, yeah. So it's a way then, and I'm back to the original question about what brought you to, the two of you, to talk about this and to think this is important. When I know, Amy, and you had been focused in schools, but you were thinking, we learn all across our community, and we need to encourage and help parents know how to support their kids when they take them on community outings. And
Right, and I also had previously worked in a children's hospital, and so also just the idea that kids need to see a doctor and may go to a dentist, and that there are just getting their hair cut. So some of these activities that are still a part of their community but are just a part of
everyday activities.
Yes. And so how do you best prepare a child for going to see the pediatrician? What are some things you can think about in advance, or to go and see the dentist? What are some things you can think about in advance? Some things that may not be quite as motivating or rewarding necessarily, but how do you help them understand it's important that you go see the doctor, and that there is a a benefit of doing that as well.
Right. And the blueprint would be applicable for those kinds of activities as well.
And we know that it's so important, because after school is over, part of what we are to do in school is to prepare students to be successful community contributors, to live out in the community, to work in the community, to explore the community. And if we don't start doing that when they're little and as they go through their educational career, then when they graduate, we've done a disservice.
Right, right. Well, we haven't done a part of what we should have done, which is acclimate this child to the community that they were born into, the community that they're going to live the rest of their lives in. Yeah, so I think that makes sense. I just think it's a wonderful book, and it's a wonderful process, I think, to help parents plan ahead so that their outings can be successful. So they can use some of the strategies I think that you might even use in a classroom, you know, like a
Absolutely.
visual schedule and
Absolutely.
supports for transition. You can use those same strategies to help navigate your community. and teach your
One of the
child about
areas on the
community.
blueprint too is what we call rewind. So after you go out into the community, after you've gone to a wedding or to a birthday party or something like that, it allows the parents to come back and kind of rewind the situation. What went well? What didn't go well? Did we not prepare in this area? And we prepared great in this area. So it's sort of like that. Okay, let's step back. Let's see how well it did go, but how can it go even better next time?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And we've used that strategy many times.
That kind of the rewind
Right.
of, okay, let's
Right,
review this.
right.
What could we have done differently? And
And I think also, what should we do the same? This seemed to be, you know, working really well. And then does that transfer into another activity or into another environment? But most definitely, you know, where should we add an additional
Right.
support, or what should we do differently?
Right.
Also.
And in addition to learning about the community, I think the child also learns how to interact with others, how it is you behave, you know, when you're outside your home. I mean, we all have our home behavior, and but we also need to know how it is. How is it to be appropriate when you're at the zoo, or when you're waiting in line, or you know, when you're going to get an ice cream cone. And those are typical activities, and they're a lot more typical, I think, in the summer when parents have more time to engage in activities with their children. But they also teach very basic life skills.
And I think that you saying typical activities, that's what we really came together and started talking about was, you know, families have said, we just want to go to church as a family, you know, but it's just too hard to go to church as a family. Or we're not talking about extravagant vacations and things like that. We're just talking about what a family does on the weekend. You know, they go to church, or we go to dinner after church, or we, you know, go to the mall together, or whatever. You know, we school shop, things like that. Those were just the typical things that we really wanted parents to experience with their children. You know,
Right, a
And I
picnic
think
in the
also-
park.
absolutely.
Also, I think about summer, and you know, if parents are working, then especially like Josh, who's 16, what is it that he can do with his peers? You know, would he go to the movies? Would he, you know, go get ice cream? Those kind of things. So as teenagers, what is it that, you know, as their social behaviors change, then how also do we continue to support them in advance to know when, you know, sure, you can go and hang out with your friends and encourage that, and to be a part of a group.
Right.
Even when it's not always as a family, but that children, or even, you know, elementary age kids could go to a, like you were mentioning earlier, a day camp or some type of activity, be a part of a sports team. So you can use these types of strategies also when you're not necessarily there all the time with your child, but empowering a coach, or, you know, talking with peers and making it an overall successful.
Yeah, right. And you mentioned another common activity for children with disabilities in the summertime, and that's day camps and even some overnight camps that some parents can choose. And how do parents make choices about camp experiences for their child? And would camp experiences be something that you would support, Amy and Jill?
I would absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Jen, what about you and with Josh?
Well, camp has been actually a great way for him to socialize during the summer, because you do lose that when you're not in school. And for Josh, a lot of his socialization happens during school, somewhat after too. So for us, it was really important to have him involved in some type of a camp activity where he's not only doing activities that he enjoys, like swimming and other craft, but he's also having opportunity to be around other kids his age and learn some social behaviors that are appropriate. And so it's been really important for us to have him in that activity, even if we've found that actually just doing a part-time, you know, day camp, not overnight, works really well for him. Others may find that the overnight camp is a good option for but it's important to find out what the camp has to offer, what type of structure do they have, what kind of strategies do they use with the kids, and make sure it's a camp that your kid's going to enjoy and that they're really going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah, because that would be a hard decision to make. I think this is going to be a structured activity for socialization purposes and for the purpose of fun for your child. They're not going to be with you, but you need to make sure that it's going to be something that's going to be enjoyable to them.
Right.
And and that would include involving activities that you know that they already enjoy. So how would parents, Jen, how would parents find out about what camp opportunities might be available for?
Well, we've had success in through his school. They've sent information home about activities that are happening over the summer. We have connected with libraries to find out what's going on. There is actually state support teams within Ohio.
Yes.
There's the one that supports Central Ohio has been great in providing a camp resource, and it lists all of the camps, at least that are local, and so then we can then take that information and call them or explore their websites to find out what's there. The Y camps, we were familiar with those, so we were able to check them out as well. But then it's a little bit of research on our part to actually find out what the camp offers, what their activities are like, how Josh would fit into that, and then if there's any way we can cover some of these strategies, this blueprint, like we can talk with them, how open are they to hearing what works for him and what we know works for him. And
Right, because they need to be responsive to what his needs are.
Right,
You want to make sure
right.
that that's a good fit.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, Jill, I think you were involved in writing another book about camps and camps, canoes, and campfires. Is that it? Now, the purpose of that book wasn't specifically for parents, was it?
No, more just how could you start a camp if you're thinking about doing that, if you're what supports would be important if you are already running a camp. So really it's when a parent calls and says, are you interested in, would you be willing to put these type of supports into place? And so it's a book really for those that are running camps to help them better understand why are visuals necessary, and they're really important for children on the autism spectrum or with a disability, but how they're beneficial for all kids to have a schedule and to be able to, like Jen was saying earlier, to be able to predict what is coming next and how to move through the day and what type of strategies to put into place.
Right. So, and I do know that we have that book in our library, just like we have the other book that we were talking about, the Out and About in the Community, that parents could check out. But we also wanted to review some other books, Jen, that you said that you would review for us, that parents might get some ideas about how to support their kids during the summer with activities that's going to promote the acquisition of those basic life skills.
Right.
And Jim, can you tell us some of the books that we could check out,
Sure.
that parents could check out of our
Well,
library?
the OCALI Lending Library has a few. There are some, basically they're kind of guiding you with activities for the summer, but then also how you could incorporate some of these strategies to kind of help your child with that. There's one on recreation outdoors. It's called Kids in the Wild.
Kids in the Wild.
And it provides just some activities that you can do camping. Maybe you enjoy camping and you want to introduce that to your child. So this would be kind of a good guide for that.
Okay, there's Kids in the Wild.
Kids in the Wild. And then the next one is 101 Activities for Kids in Tight Spaces. And I think this one is great because if you're traveling, you're in the car, or if you are I don't know, like going to movie theaters,
or
just
it's
other
raining.
It's raining, right? If you're inside, so this is kind of gives you an idea of just different activities you can do in a smaller space, or if it's just one-on-one. So
I
that
mentioned,
one's-
it even says a doctor's office there.
Yeah, so this is actually, as Jill was mentioning, kind of preparing for those. I'm sure over the summer most people do doctor's visits, dentist visits, so this might be a good way to help with that. Then there is the one on top 10 tips for survival. A guide for families with children on the autism spectrum, and this one actually provides not only just community outings but other strategies that can kind of help them with that, like playing with peers. So it had a lot of great information there too, and it was actually a really easy read too. So it was kind of nice. It kind of laid things out by different, top 10 tips. So it laid out really nicely.
Very nice. Yes.
And then you had mentioned already the canoes and camp cabins and campfires. So those were a couple books that the OCALI Lending Library has that people can check out.
Yeah, because one of the things that we do support is encouraging community activities for kids with disabilities, and that's all disabilities and kids with autism spectrum disorders, because there's no better way to learn the basic life skills that you're going to need as you become an adult and you're involved in your community in any way. And so we do have a lot of resources in our lending library. I'll let you know that in order to sign up for our lending library, you just need to go to the OCALI website, click on the lending library icon. You can download an application that you sign, put your name and address on and your email address, and you send that in to us. Once we receive your application for our lending library, we will send you an access number, a client code, and that allows you to access any resource in our library. We have DVDs and we have books. Any resource in our library for 3 weeks, and we will send you that resource once you check it out on your client code on our library software. You get your own little shopping cart, just like Amazon.com. You get a shopping cart. You can put your resources in your shopping cart, and we will send them out to you generally the next day by UPS at no cost to you. And when it is time for you to return the books or the DVDs that you have borrowed, a UPS person will show up at your door with a call tag that will allow you to mail it back in the box that it was mailed to you in. You will mail it back at no cost to you. So I just think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. All of these resources are at your fingertips. And the books that are chosen for the OCALI library, they're not textbooks. They're not 800 pages long with little dense, tiny, teeny tiny print. They're books like this. Generally, they have soft covers, and they're written in everyday English and everyday language, because we wanted parents to have access to information that professionals would also have access to, that would allow them to support their children in a way that would make their children more successful as they become adults. So we will have a list of these resources that you can find in our OCALI Lending Library. Underneath our third Thursday here that explains our topic today. We will also have the list of the family consultants, that's the state support teams, that if you're a parent that you live in another part of Ohio, another region of Ohio, you will know the state support team to contact to ask for their camp directory. And we will have a list of other places that you might look for camp information, like the libraries that you mentioned, and like the YMCAs. And you may also ask your schools about camp opportunities for your child. But just make sure that you plan for your summer, for your child, activities that will help build the kind of community living skills that they're going to need as an adult. And Jill and Amy and Jen, thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge about this. Thank you. And goodbye.